Hi, I'm Sandy Zuniga, the founder of Colorado Springs Town Tidings. Be in the know, on the go for all things Colorado Springs, delivered right to your inbox. And today's local business spotlight, I've got Rachael Ortega, medium. Welcome, Rachel.
Hello. Well, thank you, Sandy, for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure to have you. So let's go ahead and get started. Tell us a little bit about you. Who is
Um,
Rachael
well,
Ortega?
I'm a psychic medium, and I'm also a widow, and I'm a mother of five kids.
Oh, wow, five.
And yes, I have five kids. And I think for most of my life, I was a stay-at-home mom. But I always had my gifts. I always had gifts. I just didn't. I used some of them, but I didn't embrace all of them. Some of them scared me a little. So it wasn't until I got much older that I finally embraced them.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
So looking, are you a Colorado Springs native or are you a transplant?
I'm a transplant. I've been in Colorado Springs going on 19 years.
Oh, okay. Great. What
Yeah.
brought you here?
I think God brought me here, honestly. Like I said, I've always had gifts and I've always would hear a little voice in my head telling me, what about this or what about that, or maybe you should do this. And it's always been very helpful and always for my best interest. And one day I was telling my husband we needed a bigger house because we had three kids and we had four kids in one house. It was a two-bedroom house in California. And I told him we need a bigger house. And he says, okay, we'll start looking. But I was a stay-at-home mom and it was back in 2006 when the houses were crazy expensive.
Right.
And I was watching TV one day and I was like, well, maybe, and I just got this feeling, well, maybe we could look out of state.
Oh,
Yes, I had a feeling that maybe we should start looking out of state. And then one day I'm flipping through channels on the TV and I I scroll through MTV and they're talking about Colorado Springs on this show. They're talking about Colorado Springs and they're showing like Garden of the Gods and OCC and the mountains. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's really beautiful. And they're interviewing these kids that did a senior prank. And the kids were like well dressed and well mannered. And I was like, oh, wow, it's beautiful over there. I think I want to move over there. And my husband got home and I said, I think I know where I want to move to. And he's like, where? I'm like, Colorado Springs, Colorado. And he was like, okay. So I got connected with a realtor. Um, I got connected with a realtor. We came out in May, which is, the most beautiful time of year to come out, right?
right.
We come out in May. We spent a week here looking at different neighborhoods, looking at different houses. Went back home, put our house up for sale, sold our house within a few months, and we were out here by October.
Wow.
So,
And that's
yeah.
totally interesting because and actually it's similar to my story too, but a lot of people I talk to are military. And so you weren't military at all. It was just I need a change.
It was, yeah. And it was a feeling. I just had a feeling that, we should move out of state. I had this sense of urgency that we needed to get out of California. And
Okay.
I didn't know what it was, but I was like, we need to get out of here. We need to move.
Okay.
And yeah. And I've always been really good at listening to my gut. And so,
That's great. And it served you well. You're integrated with the community, you love the community, and now you went from stay-at-home mom and then now you've developed your gifts to help other people and not just for yourself, and you're sharing with the world, with our community. So I thought it was fascinating. On your website, I was reading a little bit about you had an upbringing of a religious upbringing.
yeah.
And so I'm really curious, how do you reconcile both being having that religious background, Christian, and I don't know if I saw what religion it was, but
It was
between
Christian.
it was Christian, okay, being a Christian because you still have a strong faith, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so you being a Christian and a medium, given these two paths are basically seen as conflicting, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, I can. So, like I said, I had my gifts since I was born. I was born with them, but being that my family was very religious, and these gifts run in my family. My mother was very gifted. My father was also gifted. My grandmother was very gifted. She would always tell me stories about seeing angels. Um,
Okay.
and 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 my grandfather was at one time he was a minister also. And so grew up in a very extremely conservative church.
Oh, wow.
Um, yes, very extremely conservative. And my mom always said, well, just I would tell my mom, like, I see things, I hear things, I know things, and she would say, well, just leave it alone. Just leave it alone. And I said, okay, okay, fine. So I mostly didn't talk about it, but I always listened to my gut, and I always listened to the little voice I heard in my head telling me, kind of guiding me. Um, and so when I did finally start to embrace my gifts, so what happened was my husband passed away. My husband passed away. And up until this time, I mean, I was in women's ministry for a few years. I ran the MOPS group at my church.
Oh, okay.
I was one of the directors. I was one of the co-directors for the MOPS group. So I was in women's ministry probably about 6 years. Um, and I always felt very connected with God and Jesus.
Okay.
And and even when I was running the MOPS group, we had to do a devotional in the morning, and I
Right.
would have to get up and talk. And I would sit at my computer the night before and try to write what I was going to say. And I couldn't, and I was always blank slate. And I would just pray, okay, God, let I'm just gonna go up there tomorrow, and you just tell me what you want me to say. And then I would get up in the morning, and I'd go get in front of there's like 60 something women in our group,
Wow, that
and
was a
I'd get
big
up
one.
there and I would just start, yes, and I would just start talking, and I would just talk about how God in my life, and how he's helped me with, my family, my kids, being a mom. And and I never knew, I could never prepare ahead of time. I would just say, okay, God, show me what you want me to,
Right.
tell me what you want me to say. And it would always come through. And everybody would tell me, wow, that was really good, or I needed to hear that. And so I
Right.
always felt that very close connection with God and Jesus. And so my husband got sick in 2019, and
Sorry to
and
hear
it, like,
that.
thank you. And I would have dreams that would come true. I would always know things. I remember one time me and my husband were going through this rough patch, and I was like praying, God, you know, um, he was telling me he was like he wanted to go camping by himself. He's like, I just want to go camp by myself. And I was like, yeah, right, you're not going camping by yourself. And he's like, I just need to get away. And I'm thinking, no, he's never gonna come back. So I'm like, no, you're not gonna go. And he was really upset. And I prayed. I said, okay, God, tell me what to do. I don't know what to do. He wants to go camping. I don't feel comfortable. I don't know what to do. So me and him, we had went to the gym together, and I was listening to a Christian station, and the DJ comes on, and she says, sometimes men just need to get away, and they need to go camping. They need to go by themselves out into the woods and just be at one with God. And I was like, okay, fine. I hear you.
Right.
I hear you, God. So every time I would pray and ask God for something, I would get an answer. Most of the time, I would get an answer. A song would come on, or, somebody on the radio would say something that was exactly what I had asked, stuff like that. So I always felt very connected. Um, and then my husband got sick in 2019, and and it didn't look good. He had a really rare disease, and it was by the time you're diagnosed with it, you have like a 10% chance of surviving the next
Wow.
6 months. So it wasn't good.
Right.
And I prayed a lot, and a few days. So one day I go to take a shower, and I had this vision of my husband. I'm in the shower, and I see him walk in and step into the shower with me, and he has a big smile on his face. And when I saw that, I knew in my heart that he was never going to shower with me again.
Right. Right.
And I just started crying. I was crying, crying in the shower, and I pulled myself together. And and I I went downstairs, and I saw him, and as soon as I saw him, I started crying again. He goes, "What's wrong?" I said, "I'm just afraid you're never going to shower with me again." He says, "No, I will." Well, that night he went into cardiogenic shock, and I had to call the ambulance. And then he passed away 3 days later.
Wow.
And I feel it was his soul letting me know that he was going to be going soon. And so he passed away 3 days later. The night he passed, he had told me he did not want to be sick. He was like, if they can't make me better, I'd rather just go. And he
Okay.
said, and he had peace about his passing. He said, I know I'm going to go to heaven. You know, I, I have a relationship with God and Jesus. I know I'm going to go to heaven. I know I'm going to be okay. I know you guys will be okay. And he's like, it'll be okay. And, so even the day he passed, I just said, God, I gave it up to God. Like, God, I want him here, but if you have to take him, like, that I understand. And he passed that night, and
Yeah. Sorry.
it was really hard. It was devastating, but even the night he passed away, I saw him walking out of the hospital with me. And
Okay.
I thought maybe and I see everything kind of inside my mind.
Right.
It's almost like an overlay in my field of vision. So like if you put your hand in front of your face, but you don't look at your hand, you look past it. That's kind of how I
Right.
see things.
Yep.
I saw him walking with me, in his hospital gown next to me out of the ICU. And I thought maybe I was in shock. I thought, because I would always go with him to the hospital and stay there with him. It was right before COVID. So I was fortunate enough that I got to stay with him.
Right.
And then he came home and I was talking to my mom and I had a picture of him on my phone somehow my phone had went into my gallery and pulled up a picture of him smiling at me while I was talking on the phone. And
Wow.
I knew it was him letting me know he was okay.
Right.
And and as the days went, I could feel him. I could, if you've ever been married for a long time, when your spouse is in the room, like you can feel his energy, right?
Right.
And so I could still feel his energy. I could smell him. I could sometimes I would see him like out of the corner of my eye, or I'd kind of see him with a big smile on his face. He would show me things. Like if I couldn't find something, I'd be like, Jesse, where is that thing? And then I would see where it was, exactly where it was in my head. He picked out the flowers for his funeral.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he picked out we went to go order flowers and I wanted to get red flowers, but I kept seeing red and white roses in my head. And I was like, why do I keep seeing red and white roses? I don't want that. So but when I went to order, I ordered red and white because I couldn't stop seeing red and white. So I
Right.
ordered the red and white, and then I went back the next day because I'm like, I didn't want red and white. I wanted red. Why did I order those? So I went back and I ordered the red. And when they delivered them, they were red and white.
Wow.
I was so sad. And I never told anybody that story. I had never told anybody that story, but a year later, on the anniversary of his passing, a friend of mine, she said, "Oh, let me make dinner for you guys. We were gonna get together." And she says, Let me make dinner for you and your family." I said, "Okay." And she came over and she brought red and white flowers. And she didn't know
Sure.
the story about the red and white roses, but she brought red and white flowers, and I knew it was another sign from my husband, letting me know that he's still, he was still around.
Right.
And
Right. So how do
yeah,
you,
and so what? So oh yeah, how do I reconcile that? I guess I haven't answered
yeah,
that
well,
question. Huh?
because for that, and it's a beautiful story, and I really appreciate you sharing it with us. That's a very personal story as well. And I know it'll help others. And with that, how do you reconcile between it being divine intervention and your gift, which could both be,
Well,
integrated?
my gift is divine intervention. And so once I started embracing my gifts, I was really conflicted. I was really conflicted and I really struggled because I'd always been told to stay away from this. But I kept getting all these messages and they were just so full of love. Like the love I felt in these messages was overwhelming. And I thought, well, how can that be wrong? It was bringing so much healing to people because not only was it my husband coming through, but other people were coming through. And the messages were full of so much love and healing. And finally I said, I prayed. I would pray, God, if this is not from you, just take it away from me. Take it away, block it. I don't want it. I don't want to do anything that you don't want me to do. And it just kept getting stronger and stronger. And
Okay.
then finally I finally said, okay, God, if this is what you want me to do, then I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust you and I'm going to walk in faith. that this is, this is what you want me to do. And and a few days later, and I just kept hearing in my head, faith over fear.
Okay.
And then a few days later, a friend of mine, I think my birthday had been recent, and she said, "Oh, I got you a bracelet." And I said, "Oh, okay." And she gave it to me, and it said faith over fear. And it was kind of confirmation for me,
And she
but I
didn't
was so,
know that that was your little catch line then.
no, she didn't know. So I wear it, and I wear it now I have this bracelet, and it says faith over fear. Um, because I've chosen to walk in faith. And until God tells me something different, then, I'm going to be faithful. And the work I do, it's to glorify God.
Okay.
I do it for his glory. And so I was still kind of not doing it in public. I hadn't come out into public. And one day I heard God saying, Rachel, you're not honoring me by hiding the gifts I've given to you.
Wow.
I just kept getting this feeling like I've given you these gifts for a reason. You're not honoring me by hiding them. And so I felt called to come out into the public, and I didn't want to. I was like, no, I'm going to lose friends. It's going to be terrible. But I had to. I just kept
Okay.
feeling that nudge. No, you need to come out. And so
Okay.
I did. And I decided I mean, and in the Bible talks about spiritual gifts,
Okay.
talks about spiritual gifts, different gifts, different spiritual gifts. And so I just said, okay, fine, I'll just walk in faith. And that's what I've done. That's what I've chosen to do. And just trust in
Right.
God.
Right. Wow. That partially gave me chills, just so you know. You know, it's very mature and advanced thinking that you can bring the two together and to know that this isn't in conflict with God and religion. This is God giving you, like you said, the gifts, and also He wants you to bring them out into the public. So maybe you can do part of His work that some people can't see, and you give them some comfort while you're using the gifts through Him.
One, and we bring faith also. We
Right,
bring faith that there's something bigger than what we can see in front of us.
right, right.
And yeah, and it is a really beautiful thing. Oh my, I was gonna say something, my mind went blank.
Oh, that happens to me all the time. So now that we're going into, your call yourself a medium, and I know that you have trained with some renowned mediums, and once you decided to embrace it and then bring it out to the public. So did they have any issues with the religion, spiritual side, and with their teachings, did they influence your approach?
Um, so a big misconception, which I was a big misconception of mine, is that psychic mediums are not religious or they don't believe in God but in fact, most of them are connected. And they believe whether it's God, creator, universe, source, they all believe in a creator. And they're all very connected to divine, they call it divine energy or divine source. And so my mentor, her name's Carmel Sullivan. I met connected with her, and she's actually Catholic,
Oh,
and which kind of put me at ease a little bit. And because I was like, but I didn't think psychic mediums were religious at all or believed in God. I thought it would, which I thought that's why it made it so taboo for me. So then when I finally stepped into that world, and a majority of them have relationships with Jesus and work with Jesus. And so I was like, oh, okay. And I believe it's a common misconception. And it's just a really beautiful energy that goes along with that. And so that helped. And all of my mentors and teachers also believe in Jesus and have relationships with Jesus. And the work they do is to bring healing, hope, healing, and faith to people. God
wow.
doesn't want us to suffer.
Right. Well, and it's funny because that was another one of my questions is the misconceptions with you, which you just already went ahead and addressed. So their teachings, that was that a particular good Carmo Sullivan, she was your mentor, right?
Yes,
And
she's
then
my
so
mentor.
that was a good match because she is deeply rooted in her religion as well. So I'm assuming they're not all that way. And so you got the right mentor at the right time to help bridge the gap between you feeling your religious upbringing and your gifts, and bridging that gap to say it's okay.
Yes. Yes, and it was all divinely guided. I thought you could only be one or the other. You're either religious or you were spiritual. And I didn't think you could be both, but you can be both. And then so now I'm like, well, why can't I? Then became, well, why can't I be both?
Right.
Why can't I still have a relationship with God and Jesus and be spirit and be connected with spirit as well? And so yeah, so it was a very beautiful thing now that I look back at it. But again, it was that letting go of that. I had to let go of the fear.
Right. Yeah, and that's a good lesson for all of us because we all have fear, and then some fear is good and some fear is just there to keep us from
The whole,
moving forward.
yeah, some of it's there to hold us back.
Right, exactly.
So, mhm.
And so as you were growing up, you knew you had these gifts, you were told to repress them, but I'm assuming they are coming no matter what. That's
Mhm.
not something you can necessarily control unless now with your teachings and things, maybe you have a little bit more control. But I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, growing up, these things would just happen, and different than other kids. So I'm assuming it was hard to even talk about it to the other kids because now you're an outcast, but you're still seeing these things.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Growing up, especially elementary school, I didn't really have friends because I was the weird kid. I was
I
the
can
weird kid
relate.
that would blurt things out because I would channel messages a lot. And so I would just know things that I shouldn't know, or I'd blurt things out and I was the weird kid. I didn't really have friends until I was probably in like middle school. So when I finally started having some friends and yeah, so it was I always just felt awkward around people because I was different and I knew things that I shouldn't have known and I didn't know why or how really because I didn't have anybody to teach me or guide me.
Right.
And
Even though your
and so
family had the gifts, they weren't sharing with you their experience because they were repressing them. I'm guessing.
yes. Yes. Yeah, they were ignoring. Well, my mom always, I mean, she always knew things. She always knew things. I just think she didn't under she just when you grow up always knowing things, you think everybody always knows things.
True.
You think everybody's like that. And so I thought I knew things more than most. I thought I was a really good guesser or that I was very lucky. And because I would just know the answers to things. And but I didn't understand that that's because I was psychic. I thought
Right.
everybody kind of knew stuff until I realized that they didn't.
Right. That's like people with dyslexia. They don't know that they can't read, or their things are different. They just think everybody is like that.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
not that you have dyslexia, it's just that that's another
Yeah.
gift. That's something different than what everybody else has that you had to navigate on your own.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, as someone who can communicate with spirits, what has been your most profound or unexpected experience?
Oh, my most profound. There's so many. And I've done so
What
many.
totally caught you off guard?
Oh, it always catches me off guard. I mean, it's always just so beautiful. And sometimes when I give a message, okay, so well, and this is the most recent one. I mean, there are some really beautiful ones. Okay, so the one that stands out the most, um, which was also a message for me. So like I said, my husband passed away 5 years ago now, a little over 5 years. And I was doing a reading for a client. She came in to see me and her dad had been gone for like 20 years, and she was, she died when she was young, and she was really grieving him and missing him, and she had come to see me, and I had connected with him and gave her some messages. And then I think a couple years later, maybe a year or two later, she came to see me again. And it was like, and she was just really, really missing him and really having a hard time. And her dad came through right away, and he was like, "You don't need to miss me." He's like, "You don't need to miss me. I'm here." And he said, "I've always been here." He said, "I've always been here. I've never left." And then I saw, and I'm very visual, so I see things.
Right.
Um, I'm clairvoyant, so I will see things. And I see, he says, "I'm in everything and I am everywhere." And so all of a sudden I see, like, I'm outside in a field, and there's like rocks and trees and there's birds. I see birds flying, and I see this beautiful like gold kind of energy, looks like dust, almost like this gold dust, and
Right.
it's just like spread over everything, and it's touching everything. And he's like, "You don't need to miss me. I'm right here. I've always been here. I'm everywhere and I'm in everything." And we're all energy, and our energy is all connected. We're all connected to one another through our energy. And
Right.
it was really beautiful. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And I was just like, wow. And then I realized that's a message for me too, because there's times when I really, really miss my husband being
Right.
here. And I was like, I think that's for me too. I don't need to keep missing him or being sad like that. Because her dad was kind of laughing, like, "You don't need to miss me. Like, stop, stop doing that. I'm right here. I've always been here." And it was very healing for both of us.
Right.
It was very healing and very beautiful for both of us. And I realized, oh, that's for me too. Um, Another really significant thing that happened to me, I went to church. So I have a boyfriend now, and I had went to church with him. So my husband, I couldn't go back to the church where I had been attending, because we had my husband's service there, and it was just too painful for me
Wow.
for a couple of years. And so I would listen to church online. I would listen to it online, but I couldn't walk into the building. And so I had a boyfriend, and he took me to church with him, to his church. It was a little tiny church, and probably like 50 people in there. It was a tiny little church. And we walk in, and they're singing, and I look and I see, we walk in and we're standing in the back, in the aisle, one of the rows. And I look and I see, when we walked in, I saw angels, like 5 angels, and they were huge, probably like 12 feet tall angels.
Wow.
And they were like a little bit, like just above everybody. And they were in a circle, beautiful, beautiful white robes, all glistening, and just these huge angels. There's 5 of them all in a circle. And I see silhouettes in the room, like silhouettes just lining all the walls in the room. And I believe those were everybody's loved ones were there also.
Oh,
And the people are singing, and I see this gold light coming from the middle of the ground, and it was shooting straight up through the circle of angels, and it was shooting straight up up to heaven. And
wow.
everybody's singing. They're just singing regular church, right? And I'm standing there just like, wow, just
In awe,
in
going,
total
wow.
in total awe, just saying, "Oh my gosh, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." And I remember when we left, I was like euphoric. The feeling I felt,
Right.
I felt so euphoric. I was having the best day of my life. I was just so full of love. And I think that's what people don't understand. When you do this work and you're doing it for God's purpose, for God's glory, it is love. It is true, unadulterated, uninhibited love. I always um, compare it to when you give birth and you see your child for the first time. That
Right.
love, that's what it feels like. Just beautiful, beautiful feeling.
Wow. Those are amazing stories. Now, with your gift, do you have interaction, or is it just visions that you see?
No, I have interactions with spirits also.
Okay.
Um, like if I'm talking to somebody and I can feel them come in, I can feel them come. Like, I'm talking to a client. I can feel their loved one come in, and then I can hear them answering. I'll hear them answering. I do pet readings too, and will come in too, and they'll say, "Tell them this" or "Tell them that," and so it is interact. So psychic energy is different than mediumship energy.
Okay,
Psychic
yeah, tell me
energy
the
is a lot
difference.
of Psychic energy is a lot of knowing. You just know or you feel it in your body. But when you're connecting with the spirit, you're interacting with them. And you're having a conversation, they're answering your questions, that kind of stuff. And I never call anyone in, they come in.
Okay.
If they want to come in, they come in. I never call anybody to come in. The person that shows up is whoever is supposed to show up and give the message. And
So
sometimes
when
it's not who you expected.
Oh, okay. So when somebody comes to you and you're doing a reading or something, you're not necessarily like the one with her father. You're not necessarily calling the father. You're just having a
No.
conversation and seeing who kind of comes into their circle and into yours. Is that what happens?
Yeah, I'll take a look. I'll take a look and I'll ask who they're wanting. I'll tell them who I'm seeing, and then I'll describe who's coming in, and then they'll give me, I'll ask my client what the person's name. I'll say, this is who I have here. This is what they look like. This is, who they were when they were alive. And they'll say, oh yeah, that's my dad, or that sounds like my aunt, or that sounds like my cousin, that kind of stuff. Children come through, babies will come through, animals come through, and yeah, and
So then,
some
do they ever get when they come to you, if they are like the one specifically she wanted, her father and this, that, he's the one who showed up, which was great. But when you start, does because I'm assuming there are people that are coming in with an agenda. They want to speak to this person, that had passed, they have unresolved or something. Do they ever get frustrated or something if somebody else comes in and you don't have control because you're not calling the specific person? You're hoping that they show up, but if they don't and it's somebody else, how does that kind of go in your session?
Well, it always, even if it wasn't the person they were hoping to connect with, it's somebody that they were supposed to connect with. And it's
Right.
because the messages are always for healing. They're always for love, healing, or guidance. Right. And so sometimes sometimes people will come in and they're like, oh, that's so, I didn't think they were gonna come in. They're like, I don't even talk to that person because they want to make amends. And so the message is, I've never had anybody get mad because somebody showed up that they didn't want to that they weren't expecting.
Okay, great.
Look again. I it's like a room. I see it like a room. It's all there, and I'll look in there to kind of see who, and then I'll see them kind of come forward. I'll be like, okay, who's here? And then I'll see them kind of come forward. Um, And sometimes they will, like the one that comes in will bring in the one that they wanted to talk to.
Okay.
Now it's very rare that nobody shows up, but it has happened, and it's only happened to me a couple of times. And usually what I do, if no, I had one client came, she wanted to talk with her parents, and we were sitting down, we started chatting a little bit. And I wasn't getting either of them. Nobody was coming in. And I said, I'm not getting anything. I'm not getting anything. I said, let's reschedule. Let's reschedule because sometimes it's a timing thing.
Okay.
They're not ready or something. I felt like something needed to happen. So it felt like a timing thing. I said, let's meet up again in like 6 weeks. I don't charge. If I rebook them, I don't ever charge them a second time. Um, if I'm not satisfied with the reading, I don't charge them again, and I'll rebook them, it's been very rare. It's only happened a couple times. And so I had her come back in 6 weeks, and the second time she came back, both of her parents showed up and gave her some really great messages.
Maybe they were in the restroom the first time.
I know, right? Well, it's all about energy, and sometimes the person that's wanting the message, they're not in the right place yet, the right space or the right frame of mind. People come in really nervous. They block the energy too, so it's hard to read them.
Gotcha.
If they come in and sometimes people come in, and I never understand this. They come in and they're very guarded. And
Right.
so I'm like, you got walls up. Like I can't read you if you know where they're like, you could tell because they come in and they sit like this, you know, all closed off, legs crossed, arms crossed, and I'm like, I can't read you if you're gonna be all closed off like that. Like you really have to kind of just open up.
Yeah, I
I
wonder
always
if
tell people,
that's the yeah, how good are you? Go ahead and read me. You
well,
know?
and usually it's like a friend dragged them in, right? A friend told them to come and they didn't really want to come. Or they're afraid. They're just really afraid of what the message is. But there's no jealousy or anger or on the other side. Like once people have crossed over, they're full of love and understanding.
Okay. So
And
it's a
so,
no judgment zone once
mhm.
you connect with them for that. So that the anxiety of maybe, I've disappointed this loved one and I don't know, and I'm afraid to connect with them because, I want to reconcile, but I don't want to feel bad because I whatever went on. So, and
Yeah,
you're
sometimes
saying that doesn't happen.
they're sometimes they're afraid that, their loved one is mad at them or doesn't want to talk to them. And so fear will block that energy too. And heavy grief will block the energy, makes
Right.
it harder to come through.
Yep. So you're
And
saying if you had a curmudgeon in your life and it was just, not as close as you wanted it to, when they pass, if you're connected again, that that personality trait may not or probably won't be there. Now you can have that.
um
Okay.
yeah, a lot like they do. They'll tell me, "Oh yeah, I used to be really grumpy." They'll show me how they were. Like, "Oh yeah, I used to be really grumpy," or "Yeah, I was a know-it-all." Like a lot, and this is mostly the men. A lot of times the men are like, "Yeah, and I'll see it and I'll see them doing this. And when I see this is one of my symbols. So when I see a hand doing this, then I know that they were very structured. Like things had to be a certain way. And I'll see women come in like that, and I'll see men come in. And I said, "Oh, your dad was like things had to be done a certain way, and he was always right, and it was his way or the highway." And they're like, "Yeah, that's exactly how he was." And so I have different signs and symbols for things.
Okay.
And sometimes they just come in and say, "Yeah, I was really grumpy."
All right.
I wasn't always nice. They'll come and say that. They're always
Right.
full of remorse.
Right. Gotcha. Well, you touched a little bit on the pet stuff, and I know you offer pet readings as well. So, how does communicating with animals differ from when you're communicating with human spirits?
It doesn't diff it doesn't it's not a whole lot different because I still will hear words. A lot of it is it's telepathic. A lot of it is very telepathic because I can connect with animals that have passed and animals that are still alive too, that are living. And so a lot of it is if they're living, they're talking to me telepathically, through words or through symbols. And sometimes it's just a knowing, I just know. And when they're past, a lot of times they'll show me things. Um, the biggest difference is animals are just love. They love their owners. No matter what, they're they love their owners. Even if they don't want to be with them, they love them.
Huh,
They're just pure unconditional love.
huh,
And yeah, even if their owners weren't nice to them, they still love them. It's very unconditional. And so those are my kind of my favorite readings, some of my favorite ones because their energy is just so beautiful and just they're so open and full of love and there really isn't anything they need to apologize for.
true. Well,
And
there are some pets that, animals that are difficult, and it's you do all you can, and but they still have, you know, their own things. Um, So that's interesting that you had said that because not all animals living are the same.
Well, and a lot of times when animals are very difficult, it's either they're having a lot of anxiety or and a lot of times it's environmental. So I used to breed golden retrievers when I lived in California, and I used to foster service animals too, like the puppies that were going to be service animals for angel
Right.
service dogs. We said you're fostering and training too. So I do have a lot of experience with pets, with dogs especially, and training. And I think a lot of what I see now is dogs like to have boundaries. They don't want to be in charge. And so when dogs feel like they're in a position where they have to be the leaders in their family, they get a lot of anxiety from that. And that's where you see a lot of behavioral issues come in.
Oh,
Abuse also will bring in a lot of behavioral issues.
right.
But they really want somebody to look up to and feel like they're protected instead of they have to be the protectors.
Oh, interesting. That is definitely an interesting take. So, also, can you explain the process of home blessings and cleansings? What sign indicates a space needs this service?
Well, usually they're having, paranormal activity in their house. Things are moving around or things are hearing weird noises, that kind of stuff. Sometimes it's just the energy in their home just doesn't feel good, right? And like you ever walk into a house or a building and it just feels kind of creepy, or it just the energy feels a little bit off. And so what I do is I read energy. So if you take the paranormal and mystical out of it and just look at it from a scientific standpoint, really what I do is I read energy, because everything has energy. Our souls are energy, whether we're in our bodies or not, our souls are energy, and energy doesn't die. And houses also hold energy. And so, I can read the energy in the house. I can tell if it's ghost like spirit activity, if it's a spirit that's in the house, or if it's just negative energy that needs to be cleared. Somebody likes to hang out in bars a lot. They might be bringing home a lot of negative energy with them, and just different things. If you have a lot of people coming in and out of your house, or remodeling, construction, whatever, that can bring in some negative energy. And so when I go into those homes, I assess it to see what it is. If there's a spirit, if somebody passed and didn't cross over, because sometimes people don't always cross over. Sometimes they're, depending on the circumstances of their passing, they're afraid to cross over. So, and those spirits always feel very different because those spirits feel frustrated. They feel frustrated, they feel irritated because they haven't crossed over. And when you cross over, you get healed. And
Right.
they haven't crossed over yet, and so they haven't gotten healed yet. So they're just really grumpy and irritable here, and then I can help them cross over.
Okay.
So I can either clear any negative energy, if it's just an energy thing, I can clear any negative energy in somebody's house. Or if it's a spirit that needs to move on, I can help the spirit move on.
Do you have any examples of, that stick in your mind of when you've done that?
I do. A really cool one that I did was so somebody called me to come to their house because they kept hearing knocking on the walls in one of the bedrooms. And so I went over and I didn't feel anything on the main level. I didn't really feel anything upstairs except the room where the knocking was. I felt the person in there had a lot of anxiety, is what I could feel. Just a lot of anxiety. So I cleared the energy in that room. And then I went downstairs to the basement. And when I went down to the basement, I saw a spirit down there of a man, and he was hiding from me, and I could see them like peeking around the corner. And when I see them, when they're trying to hide from me, that lets me know right off the bat that there's somebody that hasn't crossed over because they
Right.
don't want me to see them. And so,
And
so
mostly
I,
people don't see them, so it's interesting. Do they realize that you can see them? And do they
yeah,
hide when other people, uh, I'm assuming again, I'm assuming a lot in this interview.
no, no, you're fine.
When
Um,
if it's a spirit that most people don't see, do you know if they hide or not, or if they just know that
um,
you might be able to see them?
they know who can see them because so so spirits are energy, right? So they see energy. where they can see our energy. Now, my energy, because I'm very open, my energy is big and bright.
Okay.
It's very big and bright. And so when they see me coming, they're like, whoa, whoa, who's that? Where somebody that's not open, their energy will be smaller and not as bright. And so they're not really worried about them because they know they probably can't see them. But
Gotcha.
they see me coming with my big, bright energy, and they're just kind of like, whoa, who's that coming? Let me hide. And so I told my client, I said, there's a man in here, he's in his 40s. I said, I feel like he struggled a lot with addiction. I feel like he overdosed on drugs. And I said, and he's been kind of just hanging, he's the one hanging around here. And she said, oh, that's my ex. She says, yeah, I know who you're talking about. I described what he looked like. He said, yeah, that's my ex. And he had passed away before she even bought that house.
Oh,
But I think she used the money. I think, yeah, he had passed away before she even bought that house. But he was still very connected to her, and he hadn't crossed, and he felt very frustrated and very like just frustrated and not happy. And I said, he hasn't crossed over. We need to tell him to cross over. And so I said, you need to tell him to cross over. I told him he needed to go into the light. I told her, you need to go into the light. She told him, you need to go into the light. And, so I did the clearing down there. And usually we'll sage the room.
okay.
And so I leave. And then I talk to her the next day. How's it going? She goes, oh, the knocking stopped. Everything's good. I said, okay, great. A couple days later, she messages me, you know what? It started up again. The knocking started again.
Huh.
And I said, okay, I'll come out again. So I come out and and I said, and she was there with her partner. And I said, okay, I need your partner to stay up here. And me and you are going to go down to the basement. She's like, okay. So we go down to the basement and I said, you need to make sure you're letting him go. Because she still had a lot of grief around that situation. And I said, you also have to let him go. He's hanging here because he's got unfinished business, but also you're not letting him go either.
Huh.
I said, and you guys are very connected. And so you're kind of holding each other here. Both of you are kind of holding each other. And I said, so if you have to tell him to go and that you're letting him go. And I said, and you have to mean it because if there's any part of you that doesn't want him to leave, he's not going to leave. And then what I explained to him, and I started talking to him, and I said, and you need to understand that and his fear was that if he went, he wouldn't be able to come back. He wouldn't be able to be around her anymore. And I said, you can come back. I said, you'll still be able to come back and visit, but you have to go and get healed first because this is why you're feeling this way because you're not healed. So you need to go and then you can come back. And he still didn't want to go. He wanted to apologize for some stuff. So he did apologize for some stuff that happened in their relationship. And then I said, okay, well, you need to go. And he still didn't want to go. So then I asked Jesus to come and help. I asked Jesus to come in and help me to cross him over. And I saw Jesus come. I saw Jesus come in and grab him by the hand and then take him into the light
Wow.
and and I still run into her from time to time, and she tells me that ever since that second time that I came out, that everything's been good. They haven't been any issues or at all, and she healed a lot of her grief too with that session.
Wow,
Yeah.
that was very profound and beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think some of the examples really help those who are reluctant or scared about it or don't want to even know that perspective. Those really help us connect to what you're really about and help with the misconceptions on, oh, it's just a medium and, and that's the witchcraft and all that kind of stuff. You have really shown me a lot, um, a different view, and I appreciate that. And I know my viewers will as well. I've learned a lot from this interview, and I can't thank you enough. Um, Tell us how can we find you?
So you can find me on Facebook. It's under Rachel Ortega is my regular Facebook, and then I have Rachel Ortega Medium is my Facebook page. Also Instagram is also Rachel Ortega Medium. And then I have my website is rachaelortega.com. And then I also have a Facebook group that I run. It's called All Things Spiritual Colorado Facebook group. And that's a place where people can come and look for vetted practitioners for any kind of holistic or spiritual thing, or just even come to ask questions and learn.
Okay. And then what's your website again?
It's rachaelortega.com. And my name is Rachael.
Yeah, I know you spell it a little bit different. And
Yes.
so what can people expect if they are interested in your services or connecting with you? So what to expect, and then also let's touch a little bit about your grief group.
Oh yes. I love educating people because like I said, I had those misconceptions too, right? And they were all built in fear. And so I love just sharing my story with people, sharing my light with people and I love answering people's questions. And so I do offer discovery calls if people just want to call and find out, if my services will work for them or not. I do mentoring and teaching. And then I also have my grief groups because I am a widow myself and grief is hard. And in doing and meeting with my clients, one thing I was finding is that a lot of them had done grief groups already, but they needed ongoing support and they weren't really finding it. Or they have a more spiritual background and they weren't feeling comfortable in the traditional groups, or they're getting messages, signs, and symbols from their loved ones, and they don't feel like they can talk about it with anyone. And so I just kept getting this message that I need to start a grief group. So I did. I started a grief group. Sarah Grant at Treehouse Cafe has been very gracious and donating her community room for us. So we meet there twice a month. First and third Thursdays at 12 o'clock. And it's a free group. It is donation based, but I don't want that to ever be a factor for anybody. So I just want people to come. I
Right.
don't want them to feel like they have to. If they want to, great. If not, don't worry about it. And then also have an evening group that we meet on second and fourth Tuesdays at 6 o'clock at Sacred Space Therapeutics. And Amanda Farrell has been very gracious in donating her space for that too, because that is also a free group that people are welcome to come and attend.
And
And it's
that's
just all
still the
about
grief
grief.
one? Both of these are
Yeah,
grief? Okay.
yeah, they're both grief, and it's for any kind of loss. It's not specific to any kind of loss. It's an open group. We don't have a curriculum. It's just a safe place to come and talk and process grief.
Right. And then you have do you have open hours?
I do. So typically I do my open hours are from nine in the morning to 7 at night, and I am by appointment only, Monday through Thursday. And then on Fridays, I'm at Everyday Girl Adventures in Old Colorado City from 11 to 3, and I take walk-ins there as well. And then the readings I do at Everyday Girl Adventures, they're a little bit discounted from my private. There's semi-private, and they're also discounted from my private readings that I do at my office.
Right, because at Everyday Girl Adventures, you have a section in there, but it's not a closed off. It's just you.
Yeah,
It's still a little
it's
public.
yeah, it's divided off, so it's semi-private because in the back you don't really. They tell me they never hear what's going on, so it's semi-private. It's kind of screened off a little bit,
Yep.
but I also offer shorter appointments there. So if you book a private appointment with me, it's an hour minimum. But at Everyday Girl Adventures, I offer 30-minute appointments. Offer 15-minute and 30-minute appointments and 45-minute appointments. And they're a little bit discounted from my regular rate as well.
Okay, great. Well, is there anything else, parting words you want to give anybody or anything that we might have missed?
I just really want to thank you for this opportunity. Like I said, I love being in the community. I love bringing awareness because, like I said, I had a lot of misconceptions myself. And I think a lot of it is just people don't really understand because it was something that was taboo. You don't talk about this kind of stuff,
Right.
especially in religion, right? And so I'm just happy for the opportunity to share some awareness and share my light. And I do donate a lot of my services also because, like I said, what I do is sacred and it's from the heart and it's my calling.
Right.
But so thank you very much.
Oh, you're so welcome. So if anybody's interested, you watch this interview, give Rachel a call, go to her website, connect with her on social media, and I think you'll really see something a little bit different than what you thought. And maybe if there's something that's stuck in your life or you can't get past, whether it's grief or uh, anything else in your life, your job, your personal, go see Rachel. You never know what she might bring to light and help you get through the sticky points. So I think we all need it. Thank you for your light in the world and for being so bright and generous and stuff. So thank
Thank you
you.
so much, Sandy.
Okay.
You have a great day.
Do